Hey everybody, Charles for HumbleMechanic.com, back to talk about more failed Volkswagen parts. Today we're going to be talking about the valve cover and PCV valve on 2.5 liter engines. So like I said, we're going to be talking about how the PCV valve fails inside the valve cover on Volkswagen 2.5 liter engines. This engine can be found in almost the entire Volkswagen fleet. The Jetta, the Rabbit, the Sportwagen, the Beetle, and the Passat. But before we get into the show, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is Deutsch Auto Parts. These guys are the Volkswagen Audi parts experts. Awesome service, incredible pricing, a ton of really great DIY videos. They've actually done a DIY video on this valve cover. I'll be sure to put a link in the show notes, and I double checked this time to make sure they actually do have a DIY on this part. So check them out at shopdap.com. And make sure that you guys are using the links that I put in the video notes or the show notes on the blog to make sure that you get to the real sponsors of the show, not anyone that's trying to imitate some of the sponsors. So today we kind of have a 2-for-1. This is a valve cover that has a PCV valve built into it. The valve cover sits on top of the cam ladder and covers up the camshafts. This prevents oil from going all over the place. In addition to that, this one has a crank vent valve, or the PCV valve, built right into it. What is a PCV valve? Well, it stands for positive crankcase ventilation. Inside of here is a valve that helps manage the excess pressure inside the crankcase that's created by an engine under normal operating conditions. Now, this one's unique because it's built into the valve cover, but positive crankcase ventilation systems are on almost all internal combustion gas engines. So how does it work? Well, there's a vacuum line that attaches here and that pulls vacuum out. Inside of the valve cover is a diaphragm with a spring, and these work together to help manage crankcase pressure. There's also a little flap down here at the bottom which allows excess oil to drip back down on top of the camshafts. How does it fail? Well, the failure on this one is much like the 2.0 turbos, where the diaphragm tears. You can see right here on this one that there's a tear in the diaphragm. This is a tear that is man-made that I just did, but this tear here is the one that caused the failure. What might be some symptoms of a failing crank vent valve inside the valve cover on a 2.5 liter engine? Well, you're probably going to have a check engine light. You're also going to probably have a rough idle. These may also make a weird whistling noise, a lot like the 2.0 Ts do. The codes you're going to have stored are going to be fuel trim related or idle speed related. Things like P2279 or P0507. Again, either fuel trim related, system lean, system rich, or idle speed regulation related. How are we going to go about diagnosing this part? Well, if you don't have a scan tool, there's actually a pretty easy way to do it. When the diaphragm is torn, it'll actually leak vacuum out of this small hole right here. And a quick check is going to be to just put your finger over the hole and see if the idle smooths out. You can also try lifting the oil cap off. If the crankcase pressure is screwy in the engine, you may not be able to take the oil cap off with the engine running. You can also take this line off, plug it with your thumb, and if the idle smooths out, you know you got a bad crankcase vent valve. As far as DIY, this is a pretty easy DIY. You're going to probably struggle more taking the engine cover off than you will actually replacing this valve cover. It's just a series of bolts. The gasket's held on with the screws, so you don't have to worry about making a gasket. It's just a simple rubber gasket and very easy to install. So there you have it, the entire way that the valve cover with the built-in PCV valve fails. This is not as common of a repair as we seen 2 or 3 years ago, but we still do see them from time to time. This one was actually replaced last week by the guy that works next to me, so they're still out there, they're still failing, and it's something that I wanted to make sure that you guys knew about. There's one other thing that I think may contribute to these failing, and that's carbon buildup inside the crankcase vent valve. If you noticed on this one, there was a bit of carbon buildup, which is not abnormal. That may also weaken the diaphragm and cause a bit of premature failure. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you have any questions or comments, post it in the comments section below. Hey, if you liked the video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I always appreciate that. You can also subscribe on YouTube or on the blog at HumbleMechanic.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the blog, and obviously here on YouTube. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.